Hi, my name is Jenelle Riley. I'm an editor at Variety, and welcome to this SAG-AFTRA Foundation Conversation at Home. Today's guest is a two-time SAG Award winner and three-time Emmy Award winner for his work on The West Wing, Transparent, and The Handmaid's Tale, where he plays Commander Joseph Lawrence. He also would have voted for Obama a third time. Please welcome Bradley Whitford. Thank you so much for being here.
It's great to be here.
Yeah, you must get that a lot.
That's true. I would have. That's absolutely.
I believe you would have. I'm sure you probably get that a lot, but it's such a great line.
Yeah. I think I asked Jordan why he cast me, and he said he thought it would be funny to see Josh Lyman take the top of someone's cranium off. So definitely playing on that, yeah.
Although you've had 4 years, I think.
Yeah, it's spoiled.
I was talking to Lil Ray Howery, who said that he gets so much respect at TCA now when he goes to the airport. TSA.
Yeah, nobody gets respect at TCA, I can tell you that. Yeah, oh no, he must be a hit at TSA. I've gotten people at TSA going, you know, they're excited to be the hero of that movie.
Right. Well, this is primarily an audience of SAG actors who watch these, so I actually like to start by asking, how did you get your SAG card?
How did I get my SAG card? It was a movie called, I was still in acting school, and it was a movie called Dead as a Doorman.
Never even heard of this.
Well, there's probably it's shot in Atlanta, and it was a little teeny independent movie before independent movies ever saw the light of day, and it never really did.
Did it ever come? It never came out?
It came out in some form. I mean, you can find it. Dead as a Doorman. I'll tell you. You want to know a funny story from that? You know, I'd never been on a set before. I came up in the theater, and it's, you know, disorienting and distracting. And the first thing I had to do was a telephone call that was kind of a monologue. So for the first, and I over-prepared, and but I'm nervous. I've never heard this before. And this is, of course, when they turn the camera on and you hear the whir of the, you know, the actual film in there, and they get it quiet, and my heart is beating, and they say action, and I'm on the phone doing some silly monologue into the phone, and I realize, oh my God, I can do this. I have this moment of, oh, I'm going to get through this, and this is fun. And it was almost like all packed into this moment. Oh my God, I can actually make a living at something that I love. And I start to get cocky with it, and the monologue gets real loose, and I chuck the phone into my other hand and catch it, and I'm talking, and all of a sudden I hear, cut, Brad's got nose hair. Makeup, Brad's got nose hair. And so I went from this, in my first take, from this moment of just sort of orgasmic confidence to Brad's got nose hair, Brad's got nose hair, leaning back, getting my nose hair trimmed in front of a bunch of strangers. So that was how I began.
That is such a perfect encapsulation of the Hollywood experience. Just
talk about
high.
Pendulum swings. Yeah, you know, you're either you know, just sort of roaring with confidence, or just, you know, decimated. It's like dating a schizophrenic, being an actor. It's like being a schizophrenic.
I was going to say, or being the schizophrenic. Yeah. I want to talk about Handmaid's Tale, because you actually joined the show in the second season.
Yes.
And I'm sort of curious, what attracted you to the project itself? I mean, by that time we all knew how great the show was, but specifically the role of Lawrence.
Listen, I think that Handmaid's Tale is just a stunning piece of popular art. um, I thought the series was incredible. I did not know what this character was going to be. I knew that they were interested in me for a part that was potentially going to be significant. Uh, and I think I've done this long enough to understand that, it's understandable. The first couple of episodes are kind of an audition, to sort of see if it's going to work, which is understandable because television shows are very delicate things, and the chemistry of them is very delicate, and you want to make sure if a character is going to have a significant role that they fit in. So there was this sort of promise, or not a promise, but it was. I knew that if it went well, it would potentially become more of a regular situation. And this part from the beginning has just been honestly one of the most fascinating acting experiences I've ever had. And I'm a really lucky person who's had a lot of fun acting experiences. But there's something about this guy. I keep saying he's like Robert McNamara, who prosecuted the Fog of War documentary, who was a brilliant economist, business person, who revolutionized automaking and then used his brilliant brain to kill, 2 to 3 million innocent people in Southeast Asia. And it was one of these moments where somebody's big brain obliterated their humanity for a time. And I kept thinking of Fog of War, which was this sort of sad man's attempt to make sense of what he had done. And that is what, to me, is going on, is what is going on in Lawrence. And I don't know where it's going to go, and I don't know where it's going to land. And but he's in play, and it makes it really, really fascinating. Most acting feels, when you're approaching a role, you're kind of trying to focus in on what this person is. And there's something about this character and the situation he's in where it's not about narrowing what he could be, but it's about bringing it all in. And it really kind of changed the way I think about acting. And I always say, talking about acting is like dancing about architecture. You can do it all day, but it's incredibly pretentious. But it is, there's something I keep thinking about the more I get to do this in such lucky situations that maybe actors will be interested in, which is like what was so fun about like Get Out was there's a couple things going on, contradictory things, radically contradictory things. I got to do something where I did a scene with Meryl Streep, this up and coming actress, and when you're standing right there, she's going through a very intense take. You realize that there's 50 things going on with her. She's not making what actors are taught to do in acting school. She's not making a choice that narrows what that experience could be. She's she's completely open and accessing a million different sort of contradictory feelings. So as I am, aging, I'm very lucky because the acting has really become a more interesting thing to think about and explore than it's ever been, and it's always been a blast. So
I
Anyway, see,
love
it sounds pretentious.
not at all. And I love hearing that you really kind of didn't know where this character was going to go, because when he came on, he was pretty much a villain. And then in season 3, we got to see these layers of him and him sort of coming over to the good side, and the relationship he has with his wife. And none of that was told to you early on.
No, I did not. Warren Littlefield's, who's the executive producer, said to me, "Do you want to know?" And initially, I said, "You mean like if he's a good guy or a bad guy?" And I said, "Well, if you're asking me this, I already know he's not just a bad guy, because I'm a commander in Gilead." So there must be some nuance in there. I keep saying the writing on this show is incredible. The writing on a lesser show, you would have a character like Lawrence, who has done some horrific things and is responsible, for creating this whole horrible architecture of misogyny. And he would have an epiphany, and he would be a good person who just championed June's cause. But that would be an insult to the complexity of the obstacle that June has to deal with. Because that's not the way people are. People aren't villains who have epiphanies and become totally different things. They remain compromised. They remain conflicted. I do not know where this guy is gonna. I do not know. I have no idea, and I don't think Bruce does either.
Oh, really? Because of course I was going to ask, because at the end he says he has to clean up his mess, and he left a big mess. So I'm dying to know what happens in season 4.
Well, we had just begun when this shut down, and Lizzie was directing for the first time.
Wow.
Which was incredible. I say it all the time, but I've never been more impressed with anybody I've ever worked with as I am with Lizzie. Not only is she giving this performance of a generation that I call Sophie's Choice, the series, but she is, as actors, there is a danger, somebody has to write something, somebody has to decide to produce it, somebody has to decide to direct it, and then maybe they'll choose you. And we live in that world. And one thing I struggle with as an incredibly lucky actor is this frustration with the kind of psychology of submission that that we develop. And when I see somebody like Lizzie, who at her first opportunity is at the creative center of that show, in on every draft of every script, knows the lenses, knows the shots. It is an incredibly kind set, which it's an incredibly loose set, which is bizarre.
Really?
Yeah, the story, I like, we shoot in Canada, and I don't think it's offensive for me to say that Canadians are genetically and stereotypically the sweetest human beings on the planet, but the material is so brutal on the show. So you'll have these moments where, like, the AD will say something like, "Okay, I don't want to rush you, but I think we should get the nooses on the girls."
Oh, God.
Horrible contract. You'll need to spread your legs or we can't see the commander. Sorry, but it's a very Lizzie, while she gives this performance, is the least pretentious actor ever. You'll be standing right there. She'll have to go to some incredibly dark place where she is fully there emotionally, you know, and she'll do a take that'll take your breath away, and they'll go, you know, focus was off, and she'll go, that's okay, we'll do it again. And I find it incredible.
And I don't know if you actually got to interact with her on the West Wing, but you worked with her back then.
Just a little bit, and you know, we were in some scenes together. But yeah, she was, when she first came on West Wing, she, you know, she was a 17-year-old kid, and you could tell she was a great actor. But I'm very excited to see what she is going to do, not only as an actor going forward, but as a director and as a producer.
You always find yourself, you know, involved in these amazing ensembles. You have so many SAG Ensemble Award nominations for all the different shows you've done. I'm sort of curious. I don't know if that's something you feel drawn to, or if you've just been lucky.
Well, I think it's you know, there's it's what you want to, it's the most productive way to tell the best stories, is to have a sense of a strong ensemble. Actors know that if you're lucky enough to be in a TV show, which is a miracle, you're lucky enough to get hired, it's a miracle. It's a miracle if it's not humiliating. And then it's a miracle if an audience embraces it. And then there can be this sort of horrible fear of like, you know, is somebody gonna pop and become the star? And there was always this great feeling on West Wing of, oh no, this is everybody, you know, this is absolutely everybody. And there's a real sense of that, even on, you know, on Handmaid's Tale, again, because of Lizzie involving the actors in the creative process, and not, you know, acting like she's number one on the call sheet. And that's, you know, that's where you get the best work. I can always tell if I watch a movie what the atmosphere on the set was like. Basically, I can tell if the director was a jerk or not, because yeah, because if the director's a jerk, some people are going to struggle in a way that you can kind of pick up on. The sort of more polished freaks will save themselves, and other people will really struggle, but there'll be a stiffness to it. When you watch, I think on West Wing and I think on Handmaid's Tale, you get this sense of everybody's blood is flowing. And there's a kind of freedom and lack of fear that allows the real idiosyncrasy of the actors and the characters to come through. And there's a kind of stiffness when you have a bad director.
I want to talk to you about.
Oh, you do? You know, Mike Nichols used to say that, I was talking with him once, and I think he had said this other times, but he says, it's weird as a director because he said it's kind of like sex, because you have never seen anyone else perform your role. As a director, you're the only one who's ever been directing there. And my response to him was, well, yeah, but you know, if you're on a show like The West Wing, you get fucked by a different person every week. And you really see all different kinds. And I do not hate directors at all. I love them, but they need, one thing, and maybe actors can relate to this. I'm not known, I don't think, as somebody who is a jerk on the set and is, you know, gets in fights with actors or directors. If anything, I I'm too much of a kind of a Labrador puppy. You know, I need everybody to like me and all that bullshit. So I'm easy to get along with. But if I am totally honest, whenever any director has ever said anything to me, I go through 3 silent beats. Fuck you. I suck. Okay, what? And I truly believe that every actor goes through that. And virtually all of us get to very quickly to, okay, what? There's some people who live on fuck you. There's some people who live on I suck. But it's it's a tricky thing to navigate. And listen, directors would feel the same way if they had somebody following them around going, I don't like that shot.
Mm.
Yeah, that's okay, but do it this way. Because as an actor, when you're acting, you're naked, out on a limb, and then they say cut, and they say, oh, you did it wrong, and that's always something, something you have to kind of recover from. It's tricky, and I think every actor has to learn how to navigate direction, especially coming up when you are given when it is assumed that you should just take the direction.
I'm sort of curious, with so much heavy material on The Handmaid's Tale, are you guys able to find levity sort of on set? Like, are you joking between takes? When you go home at the end of the day, are you able to let go of your character and experience for the evening?
Yes, and I think it's almost a psychological compensation for the darkness of the material that in between. And again, these are very painful, horrific scenes, that we're trying to bring to life. But there's an extraordinary amount of joking around. You'd be shocked.
I'd love to see the blooper reel.
Which, yeah, the blooper reel would probably get us all in a lot of trouble. But it's something I really believe that the best preparation for me, whether it's serious material, comic material, complicated stuff on stage, complicated stuff on film, the best preparation for me, the best state to be in, is to be fucking around as much as possible. I'm telling you, because I don't know, it relaxes you. It sort of takes the kind of preciousness out of it.
It's interesting. Before this, I was on a call where people were actually talking about the West Wing and how television and all entertainment really can be aspirational. It can show us how things maybe should be, and maybe we shouldn't settle for less. And I'm thinking of these two shows on opposite ends of the spectrum, where Handmaid's Tale began.
My career is basically tracking the death of democracy. They're very, I always joke that West Wing is progressive porn. It's very kind of reassuring to see really well-informed, well-intentioned people try to tackle problems. I used to get defensive when people would say that kind of, that it was a fantasy that many good people, could work in the White House. And we were always up against The Sopranos, which is honestly one of my favorite shows ever. But I got in trouble once because I think I said, you know what a fantasy is? A fantasy is a hitman in therapy. That's you know, 6 people around Bill Clinton and 6 people around George Bush who actually believe in them, even God forbid Trump. I'm afraid they do. Um, but yeah, I mean, you know what's really interesting about those shows too, that I'm just kind of tracking in terms of the way material changes. You know, West Wing is probably the greatest example of, you know, the verbal torrent. Um, and it's interesting because I was watching, I love Mrs. Mabel. And that's a verbal torrent too.
Mhm.
But there is, if you look at The Crown, or you look at Handmaids, these scripts are very sparse.
Yeah.
It is what Samuel Beckett said. It's not about the words. It's about the silences in between, and it's a much different. It's a much different acting experience, and when you have all that time in between for those performances to breathe, it's just it's a different animal. And I love both sort of styles, but it's a very different thing. The first day that I shot on Handmaids, Dana Reed was directing, a wonderful director from Australia, and I, in general, have a kind of impatience in me to sort of, you know, kind of speed things up. And she kept saying, you know, slow it down, slow it down. I was like, really? And she's like, yeah, slow it down, slow it down. And we did all of these takes where I was sort of giving space to all these transitions. And she said, yeah, that's it. And I said, can we do one more? And I was kind of joking with her. I was kind of making fun of how it would be if I really took a lot of time. And I was going and I was getting a beer and I was opening a beer. And so I took my time getting up. I took my time getting the beer, put the beer down. I made a reason to search for the can opener. I looked for the right way to do, like, I just took as long as you could possibly take to open a beer and pour it. And that was the take that they used.
No way.
Yeah. And then I realized, oh, this is great. I can, like, you know, go to the dog park, you know, in between these beats.
Because both those shows, and obviously Transparent also had a huge a passionate following, but I think that these are shows that in addition to being really quality, they really speak to people on a personal level. I'm sort of curious. I do follow you on Twitter, so I know you're not afraid.
Oh God, I'm sorry.
No, it's great. But do people want to come up and talk to you about these things, and what is it mostly that they want to say?
You know, it's a variety. It's a variety of things. I mean, it's funny because I've been very, very lucky, and these are things that I've always cared about. I've way before West Wing was very interested in political stuff. My family was active. But I've had this really lucky thing happen. I mean, West Wing was the creative experience that everybody or nobody should have. That writing, those actors, that arena. But it also happened to be about something that the culture was sort of wrestling with. It, you know, was dealing with a lot of those issues. And then things like Transparent and Get Out and Handmaids, you know, it may look like I'm trying to do some sort of ongoing political commentary, but it really is just that these parts have come up, and I've been very lucky because they've been amazing creative experiences that happen to be about, you know, issues that people are wrestling with.
As I mentioned before, we saw Commander Lawrence go through so much in season 3. For you as an actor, what ended up being the most challenging scene or moment or arc?
Well, without a doubt, the hardest thing was a ceremony scene where we knew that there was discussion that those scenes are so upsetting, and we knew that we weren't going to show it. But it was really disturbing to get ready to do that, and I think of that scene, and the writing in that scene is absolutely brilliant. It's the hair just went up on the back of our necks as we started to act it, as you're acting a scene where somebody who's spoiler alert, someone who's trying to reassure the person who's about to rape them. Mm-hmm. Is an amazing piece of writing. When you're in the scenes, it's really disturbing. There's a scene where I humiliate her and make her get a book out of the bookcase. Handmaids are not supposed to read, so I'm sort of torturing her. And again, it's an example of the kind of brilliant writing where there are many things going on in that scene. Number one, you're run-of-the-mill Gilead, let's bond over humiliating women. Number two, I'm testing her. I'm really testing her. If I'm going to go out on the limb that I am going to go out on with this woman, I need to know that that she can be trusted, that she's not. I'm sure in my misogynist mind, I'm thinking, how do I know that she's not just some sentimental woman who wants to get her baby back? So I'm testing her. I'm making the commanders bond with me because we're having a fight and I'm distracting them by having that. There's just so many things going on in that scene. Mm-hmm. But without a doubt, the ceremony scene was the most upsetting.
I'm sure. Before we go, I want to remind everyone watching at home that you can look in the comments for information on SAG-AFTRA Foundation's COVID-19 Relief Fund. And I'm just sort of talking to people. We're obviously doing this virtually for a reason. What are you sort of doing to stay creative during this time? Are there things you're watching, reading?
Yeah, I'm trying to read as much as I can. As much as I can. I'm actually one thing I'm working on is my brother is a journalist, and there's a book that he wrote a long time ago that I'm working on with a writer, adapting. I've done a kind of Freaky Friday podcast. I've been doing, more than anything, a lot of virtual political actions. I'm involved in, I'm on the board of Let America Vote, and we're trying to raise money for Stacey Abrams' organization and the Fair Election Center. That is the most upsetting thing to me going on in the country right now. And I hope that everyone at SAG, and I actually think that SAG, one thing we're working on is trying to make universities, unions, centers, civic hubs, so that people who communicate with specific communities can give people geographically relevant, up-to-the-minute voter information, because that's going to be very important. Everybody has to not only have a plan to vote, but make sure everybody else that they know has a plan to vote. So that's kind of what I'm obsessed with.
That's great. Do you have any sites you want to plug while we're here?
Yeah. Go to the Fair Election Center. go to Let America Vote. And Stacey Abrams is the most inspiring human being. Fair Fight is an incredible organization. And I'm from Wisconsin, and I know we're supposed to be nonpartisan, but the Wisconsin Democratic Party needs your help.
Your hometown hero is advising you, Wisconsin. Listen.
Yeah, come on, Wisconsin. Oh, and also we really need young people or able people to train to be poll workers. If you are, one thing that happened just now in Georgia and happened in Wisconsin, in Milwaukee, they usually have 130 polling places and they only had 5 because, as you know, when you go to vote in person, generally the person volunteering is a retired person who understandably during COVID should not be exposed to that. So we need young people to step up and do that.
Yes, everyone please go out and vote so that Handmaid's Tale doesn't become more of a reality.
Yes, don't make it a documentary.
I want to thank you so much for joining us. It's probably good you don't know anything more about season 4 because I would just be badgering you nonstop. But I really can't wait to see what's up next. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you. Thank you. It was fun.